Thank you for tuning into our podcast from the Darkhorse's mouth. Today's episode is You're Fired, Staffing at its Finest. And joining us is our co-pilot, Carly.
Hello.
And our guest, Carey Martin.
Hi, everyone.
Carey is the co-founder of a company called Custom Hiring Solutions here in the Phoenix, Scottsdale area. And Carey, if you could just start us off by giving us a little bit of your background, your company background, and how your company, Custom Hiring Solutions, came to be.
Sure. Well, thank you both for having me, first of all. Good to see you
Welcome,
both.
welcome.
Yes. Let's see, a little about me. So I am from the Midwest, from Kansas City originally. And actually, that's where I got my start in recruiting, was with a group there in the Midwest. And honestly, I fell in love with it. It's a never-ending pursuit of talent, right? All companies are looking for good talent. So had the opportunity to work with a lot of small business owners, learning a little bit more about their needs and the challenges that they face on a daily basis of not only finding good talent, but retaining it, which is key too.
Yeah.
And over the years that evolved. I was recruiting for small business owners, and then specifically in the healthcare sector, started recruiting for larger companies. And what I found was the difference between those two groups, it was astonishing. It's almost like recruiting in two different worlds, if you will. So fast forward to 2019, I've had about 19 years in the industry,
Wow.
recruiting. So when faced with the opportunity, or I guess presented with the opportunity to start something of my own, it just made a lot of sense. Really, when I started digging into every recruiting project I'd been part of, what I found was that there was really a market that wasn't being served, and those were the small business owners that had a really great idea, and they wanted to standardize and monetize it. So you could find recruiting firms that would serve the larger companies all day long, right? Deep pockets, lots of orders, things like that. But then when you started talking about small business owners with different budget, different challenges,
Sure.
and you start looking at how lucrative recruiting is as an industry, a lot of folks were still kind of leaning towards that large company side where the money is, like I said. And it's a lot easier to get on with those teams, and not necessarily easier to work with or fill, but completely different market. So we decided really just to sit down and look at what resonated with me when I was looking at business owners and the challenges that they had. What did I want to help them solve for? And I really decided to pick up on all the pieces that I felt like the recruiting industry was missing out on. Literally made a list, sat down with Trey, who's my business partner, and we decided which of those pieces were going to be part of our identity and which solutions were we going to bring to the table for small business owners. And of course, whenever you start a company, as you know, Dan, you have ideas of grandeur. Let's see, 4 months after that grand idea, COVID hit.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
And every single client that we were engaged with canceled their recruiting projects because nobody knew what was happening at the time.
Sure.
What was going to happen with the virus? What would it mean for staffing, for business in general? So that was a rough few months, but as any one knows, in small business especially, you just pick up and try it again. So that's what we did. And when we relaunched about 7 months later, completely different market, and found that there was a real need, especially here in the Phoenix Valley, of small business owners that had done the traditional job boards and things like that, and they were just struggling. They could either get the folks in the door and not keep them, or struggle to even get them in the door. Maybe lots of turnover, lots of issues like that. So we decided to really bring a unique approach in that We're not a retained search, which is traditionally what you find. You find some really good recruiters, you reach out to them and you ask for their help. And kind of the first one to the table with the right person, that's who you're going to do business with. Our approach was a little bit different because we found that for the long-term success, we needed to know more. We needed to know more than just who they were looking at a high level, even more than we could glean from one screening call, if you will. So we took a different approach and invested more time up front getting to know the business owners, the culture, the challenges, having some of those tough conversations, what's been working, what hasn't been working, and then helping to identify where the challenges were. And then the next step was really analyzing, is what this business owner needs out there in the market? And if so, do we feel confident as a resource to go find that person? And that's really where we differentiate those services, as being able to dive in with a small business, learn a little bit more, and help bring a little better aligned talent to the table.
So there's a lot of great information there. And so to summarize, first off, I think that there's probably a lot of thankful small business owners that you work with, because I know myself as a small business owner, several times over now. Staffing is by far and large, outside of generating the revenue from marketing, I mean, staffing is really probably the most critical challenge to maintaining your business, but certainly being able to scale your business. And I think that the small business market is very, very underserved. And I think that, kind of drawing back to what you said earlier, and correct me if I'm wrong if I missummarize, but sound like 19 years of staffing experience before you started Custom Hiring Solutions, in the best possible time, right before COVID
Perfect
started.
summary.
Yeah.
And in the previous 19 years, it sounded like there was you had both the small business experience and also the big corporate experience.
Correct.
Right? In two totally different worlds.
Very different.
Corporate
Yes.
worlds has lots and lots of money, right? Has lots and lots of needs.
Yes.
So you're probably, maybe the money is not an issue, but of course, there's probably a big competitive landscape.
Absolutely.
That'd be fair to say.
Yes.
And then on the small business owner need, not a lot of money,
Right.
but a
Limited.
huge need,
Right.
and underserved. And so what you did, or what it sounded like you did, like a lot of small business owners and successful business owners, is identify the list of challenges and then build a company around it.
Right.
Awesome. So again, as it relates to the small business owners and the challenges that they're experiencing in staffing, when they come to you, what's the typical, what's the conversation like
Sure.
on average?
Sure. Well, we'll skip the cuss words that usually lead those
Yeah,
conversations.
people like this.
Right. The conversation usually is, hey, we're desperate. We've tried everything. We're figuring, let's just give it a shot. Honestly, there's oftentimes on the front end with recruiting, not always 100% confidence. There's not always, or I shouldn't say always, oftentimes there are reservations. It can be expensive. It can be time consuming. At this point, you feel like you've tried a lot of things and you need something definitive, right? So really what we heard is that there's a need, and if we can fill it by slowing the process down, digging in just a little bit deeper, and being able to connect those, resources all together is important. Obviously, the ultimate goal. I think other than, we're desperate and we've tried everything, we also probably hear second most frequent challenge is we can get folks here. We seem like we have great conversation, and then I don't know what happens. So again, another level of kind of that connection piece. And they're always, I've said forever, when you work in recruiting and or you're a small business owner and you have to hire, you are literally working with someone who can change their mind at any time. There are a lot of opportunities out there. Talent is always going to be pursued. So
Mhm.
there are a lot of unknowns. And being a small business owner, you have a lot on your plate. Adding recruiting, it's very similar to sales or service. It's a different skill set, different technique. So sometimes for them, it's just finding that person who's willing to help them on a temporary basis.
Right.
A lot of these folks don't need 10 or 12 people a year, maybe
Mhm.
one person a year.
Right.
Mhm.
So you want to be able to connect the resource back to what they truly need. And that's really what they told, or that's what they told us, is they could either find the folks, have decent conversations, but not be able to close the deal and get them on board. And or they've tried everything and they're just not getting the right folks.
Got it.
Yeah.
So, for the small business owner that's like, hey, I'm on the job Indeed, and I don't know all of them, but let's
Mhm.
just say all of them, right? And they're able to get the people there,
Uh-huh.
right? They have some conversations, probably some people that they like.
Mhm.
But like you said, they can't close the deal, or there's a gap there between me, the employer, saying yes, you're a perfect fit, and the potential employee looking back and saying, I don't think so. So what's that typical gap? Like, what are in your experience, the employees are that view it as like, this is something that I have to have or I want to have? Like, where do you see the gaps from the employer perspective of like, I want this person, but I just can't get them?
Sure. Good question. One of the things that come to mind is it's really easy, especially as a business owner. You know what you need, right? You know who
Yes.
you need. You can imagine them. You probably dreamt of them. You can write it down on paper. You maybe have met them at the,
Sketch artist.
whatever it is, right? And so sometimes when we're meeting with people, we want that person from the resume we've seen, or maybe even the phone call we've had, to be that person. So we forget to ask enough questions to really gain the insight on that candidate that we need, because we, as a business owner, are typically focused on our business, our needs. Wow, Dan, you look great on paper. The conversation went well. Here's what we're needing. Here's what we're looking for. And we go down that path. Sometimes professionals will stop you and maybe say, that's not really what I'm looking for. More often than not, though, you finish that conversation and you, as a business owner, have a conclusion. You think this person's great, but we forget to connect the dots with, how did they feel? What is your level of interest? And the reality is, sometimes sitting in front of the business owner, I, as a candidate or a candidate being interviewed, may not be comfortable saying, hey, this isn't for me, or asking some of those tough questions. So I think sometimes it's the insight. And when you're recruiting, you're building rapport with candidates a little differently than when you're posting a job ad and someone's responding. So gives you a little different level of insight to the candidate and an opportunity to hear more about what they're genuinely looking for, as opposed to maybe what they hear from you and think it sounds pretty good in the moment.
Yeah, we've all been ghosted too. You think they're great, and you're like,
Yes.
yes, they're coming, and then like they're not responding, and it's so disappointing. So to close that gap is helpful, I'm sure.
Sure.
You talked about digging in a little deeper with the business owner. Can you talk to us, elaborate a little bit more about what you mean by digging in and getting to
Sure.
know them?
We like to start the conversation off with, who do you have on your team that you wish you had 5 of?
Mm.
Start with those
Mhm.
kinds of questions. And then, what has not been working? Tell us the resources you've used and what hasn't worked. More often than not, you'll find a pattern. And
Mhm.
then that's where the important conversations start, because really what we're trying to do is find, every company typically will already have their process, but we're just trying to find the point in the process that needs optimized. And then from there, when you make that change, you kind of see what the results are downstream a little bit.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's good.
And also understanding what they cover in their interviews is really important too. We have had a lot of conversations with business owners that really were struggling. I sat down and had a conversation with them and learned they really just needed some education on how to interview just a little better to get to the answers that they needed to be able to
Sure.
make that decision. So
Mhm.
sometimes it can be just simple coaching.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How important is the company's story, right?
Sure. For small business owners, it's critical.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. A lot of times, especially with small business owners, one of the biggest questions is, how can I compete with these bigger companies out
Right.
there, right? They have more dollars, more benefits, more whatever it might be. Um, typically the folks that you're looking for, they're not that same talent pool, because that talent pool is out there that is looking for a large company with established procedure,
Hmm.
excellent benefits, career paths built out, things of that nature. Not everyone's looking for that. You have other folks that have the same talent, but they're in a different category as far as someone who, for instance, wants to build. We've all come across someone that's like,
Mhm.
heck yeah, let me roll up my sleeves. I'm in it to win it until we get it built. And then,
Yeah,
let me
that's
know
me.
what else. Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Like, please don't make me go to that big company.
Right. So,
Prison with a paycheck.
exactly. And so that's a great point though, because the folks that
Mhm.
are looking for that, we're not really competing. And that's a piece of education we can offer small businesses, right? That you're competing for that talent, but not that same candidate. That's two totally different
Oh.
conversations. So
Mhm.
you might need that skill set, but you're looking for someone who X is looking for your story. Maybe it's family owned, maybe it's built from the ground up, maybe it's any other number of connections. But
Mhm.
the story is important. And if people can find your story and they can connect with it, they're going to be more likely to either call you back, call your recruiter back, or even respond to your ad. You know,
Yeah.
sometimes in our world, people can get information so quickly. So you can be chugging right along, having a great conversation with someone, and you think they're moving to the next stage, if you will. Um, they're going to be out there looking for information. So you want to make sure that your brand is out there, that it's available to them. And ideally, you have a good culture where people are speaking positively about you. And that, of course, always lends well to referrals, right?
Mhm.
Favorite way to hire.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk to us a little bit about the importance of culture
Mhm.
and and this kind of goes maybe to the what do I want to say, the title, you're fired,
Mhm.
right? But when you hire someone, obviously there's a good hire, which is
Mhm.
those five people those people we want five of, and
Right.
then there's your not so good hire. And when you have one of those not such a good hire, what's the impact that they can have on culture?
Sure. Well, it's far and wide, right? And it's not even so much just the culture of like, maybe walking in the building and they're just not as positive, or maybe they're not as hard of a worker, or whatever that piece might be. But sometimes it's more the legacy that um, individual is kind of creating within the company. Um, you might have five people that are not that way, but you have that one person. There's the whole bad apple thing, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, Ideally, you can have that conversation and just say, hey, our culture and our way is this way, and we'd love to have you be part of it. Um, Sometimes it just doesn't work out that way,
Hmm.
Um, the impact, I think, too, um, it can really, give employees the wrong idea. You want to
Right.
make sure that the accountability is there, that it's consistent, and really that folks know what to expect, because it's been proven over and over in human psychology, right? We like boundaries. We like to know what to expect. And you have to understand, too, as you're building a small business, every resource you bring in is typically critical. So
Hmm.
there's not usually as much room for that margin of error as you have in a larger company. So I would say for a small business owner, it's more impactful. If I put a number to it, it'd be guessing, so I won't do that. But it's incredibly impactful, and again, because those resources are so vital, it's almost where it can be exponential. Where you maybe don't have the production from that seat, if you will, and then how's that impacting your team? And then if you start adding up time that you have talking about these or having conversations
Yeah.
about these topics, then you can actually put dollars to it, and it could be a little scary.
Yeah,
So
someone listening to this just passed
Costly.
out.
Yeah.
exactly.
Oh my gosh.
It was starting to give me anxiety. I was like, no, no.
When you start putting those numbers to it, it's like, oh, well, there's a reason that they say hire slow and terminate fast, right?
Yeah,
Hire slow,
Yeah.
fire
yeah,
fast.
and so let's talk about that a little bit. So how do you balance hiring quickly versus hiring the right person? And
Sure.
to the other example, right? You've got this person, and like you said, in a small business, they're all critical pieces, and it's just like, okay, this critical piece is, let's call it, culture issue. It could be any issue, right? But they're a piece.
hmm
And you're like, and for me to go replace that piece is going to take time. It's going to cost me money. Like, do I put up with it? Do I develop it? Like, how do I balance it? So those are all questions, that of course have went through my head over and over and over as, continue to build, grow, and scale an organization, which, I guess, let me re-ask my question. So with that in mind, like, how do you balance hiring quickly versus hiring the right person?
Sure. Well, I would say one thing, Dan, to address your question where you say, how do you balance that? Maybe the one issue is culture or whatever it might be. I always say this. If you imagine that person gave their notice to you and they said, hey, there's no discussion about this. I have another opportunity. I'll be leaving you in 30 days. After that initial shock wears off, are you happy to be making this change, or are you dreading this like, oh my gosh, what does this mean for us? There usually are few people that will make you actually dread that change in your organization. A lot of times you think that until you can sleep on it and or process it a little bit more.
Right.
So that usually is a dead giveaway. The hiring quickly versus the right person, honestly, there's no science to it. It's somewhere between science and art and luck and
math.
Right, yes, it's a numbers game.
Yeah.
But hiring, once you understand who you're looking for, honestly, the talent, the skill set is the easy part, right? You typically know who you need, whether it is a technician, a salesperson, whatever it might be. Figuring out who you are as a company and being honest about it, and then being able to put that into words and or screening tools is the super important piece. That's typically where a seasoned recruiter is helpful. They can ask some of those questions and get you a little more information. Which can be really, really helpful.
Right. I'd imagine, because you're doing it every day, and, you kind of, you start to see trends with people and personalities, and you probably have a nice question set, which pulls out some of that information.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And you oftentimes, especially in that exploratory phase, that's the piece that doesn't last long enough. Because we are so excited to get to the thing that we want.
Right.
So it's kind of that question to failure, right? When we talk with sales or recruiting staff, the same as we do selling anything, you're going to question to failure. You're going to ask until they say something that is like, okay, this is a yes, or they have self-selected out. Oftentimes, you'll find yourself, for instance, we talk to small business owners about the difference between having a skill set, of course, something that someone has to be able to do, and then what the outcome is from that. So when you put on a job description, for instance, I need someone who has excellent verbal and written communication skills. How are you measuring that? Okay, so I need someone who will pick up the phone 30 times a day and send 30 follow-up emails. That's a very different skill set than excellent written and verbal communication, right? So there are some of those things where you're looking at results. And so for me, whenever you're looking at how best to get there, find your result and work backwards in your questioning. So if your end result is you need somebody to pick up the phone a lot, well, that's a different line of questioning than how comfortable are you sending an email? Or how comfortable are you communicating with a client? That's different. So sometimes it's about that how you're asking, and staying focused on those results that you're trying to get. I have no idea if that answered your question or not.
No, I think I think it did.
Sure did.
Yes, I don't have any questions regarding that. Maybe a follow-up question. So let's talk a little bit about the human factor, right? Especially as it relates to, you bring people on, when you got to let people go, even if they're the right person, the wrong person. I mean, I don't know me. I'd rather just continue to try to work with them and develop them. Probably hold on to people way too long. That's me. And then other people maybe don't have an issue with it. They're just like, out the door you go.
Sure.
And so from the human factor, like, how do you take that into account when you're firing people? Like, what's your process? How are you able to take the emotion out of it, or is it? How do you think about it to where it's not as maybe emotionally impactful?
Sure. It's a good question because at the end of the day, most people wouldn't say they like to fire anybody, right? But the reality is sometimes it's just not a fit and it has to be done. A long time ago, someone suggested that I consider it this. If I were to retain that employee, am I genuinely giving them the best opportunity at a successful career? Because if you care about recruiting and you care about small business owners and who they're hiring, how they're training, how they're retaining, you genuinely care about those outcomes. So to keep someone in a role that they're simply not a fit for and or they're not successful as far as from the company's perspective, to me it's a disservice to their professional career.
Mm,
They should be told with honesty where their strengths lie, um, where the deficit is for the position that they're in currently, why this can't continue, and allow them to go find that spot that is right for them. And then when you're talking about the impact for the business owner that's having to let that person go, again, your company is suffering. Every day that you allow someone to stay in the wrong role, your company is suffering. Most business owners that I talk to say the same thing. There's no one person bigger than the greater good here, right? Like we're all in this together.
Hmm.
We're all working towards the same, common goal. So to me, that makes it a lot less emotional, if you will. At the end of the day, though, you're still impacting someone's life and their career and things like that. But I think we hold out our responsibility and our accountability to where it belongs and not beyond,
Hmm.
right? So we analyze the business relationship and we assess and make decisions based on that. You can still terminate with a huge human heart and hand, but it be very business and professional.
Right.
yeah.
I think that's great perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you're right. Someone in the wrong role that's not necessarily working for the company, like they're not growing. They're just there. And if it's not a good fit and it's not within their skill set, and they're likely probably not happy
Right.
either. I mean, obviously, everyone needs a job because you need to live and you need to work and things like that. But being there and going through the motions and not happy. Whereas if you're, let's call it repurposed to your skill set somewhere else. I mean, I think not all people, but I think eventually people kind of find that
Hmm.
right fit. And from the perspective you're speaking towards, it's like, hey, let's move you and help you find that versus in a place that's not really working for either of us.
Right. And we've had a lot of conversations with folks that um, when you have that conversation with them and you say, I can tell that you're not happy. Your productivity has changed, your attitude has changed, whatever the thing is, if you will. Um, a lot of times folks recognize that. And if they have a good feedback system and a good open door policy where they can have those conversations, it makes it a little easier. You'd be surprised how many people will say, you know what, you're right, I'm not happy. And I would rather give my notice than to be written up or continue to do this where it might lead to a termination. So sometimes giving someone, a good perspective about how things are going can kind of open up their mind and let them see that as an opportunity as well. But I think the feedback loop is important, right?
Hmm.
If they're unhappy and you're unhappy, well, then it's kind of a no-brainer, right?
Yes.
Right.
If you want to keep that person there and they'd like to stay, then you have a list of things that need to be accomplished to make that happen, and that's a little easier. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think the open communication and the feedback loop is important on that one.
Yeah, got it. So then on the flip side, how do you measure that your staffing recruiting process is working?
Sure. Really, it's a good question, Dan, because it kind of depends on the size that you are. If you have multiple leaders,
Hmm.
to me, the question is directly to them. Do you have enough quality candidates when you have an open position that you can make your hires in a reasonable timeline? If the answer is no, we're getting everybody around the table to figure out what's happening. Um, is does the recruiting team need to step up their efforts? Do we need to look at market viability? What are those factors that are changing that candidate flow? Um, but yeah, it's an important piece for sure.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah, and talking about market viability and small business owners, and they've got a very small set of resources to invest sometimes.
Hmm.
And so, talk to us a little bit about how you would talk to a small business owner and letting them know, hey, you're not getting the talent because of maybe it's the salary or the benefit package, and
Hmm.
just coaching them through that and what that conversation's like.
Sure. Well, and it honestly, it's kind of the same as terminating someone. I think it's my
Mhm.
job to present all the
Yeah.
information here. Sometimes it's
Yeah,
not the pretty picture, but it's the
right.
real picture, which allows you to then, as a business owner, make adjustments and determine where you want to be positioned in that market. Because the reality is, not every business owner wants to be the best paying with the best benefit package
Mm,
with whatever. Because again, the company's story and the culture and the history is important, and you're going to draw those people. Now, you have to be competitive in the market in some way or another, or it's going to be really hard to keep that talent, because you can get them and train them, and then it's easy for them to get recruited away if you don't have the tools to really keep them there. I forgot what I was supposed to be talking about now.
Oh no, it's the having that conversation with them, like, hey, you have to increase your budget. But
Oh, right.
It
So
sounds like you get kind of creative around that, like, hey, it's your story. And then if they can't offer that heavy package, kind of how do you, work with them just to see that bigger picture and how.
sure. And unfortunately, there are times that we aren't a good resource for
Okay.
whatever reason. And sometimes it's just where the company is
Mm-hmm.
in its growth, maybe with its budget, and realizing what the market is. Because a lot of times, a business owner, especially if you are newer in the industry or you're running with a team, 5 or 6 people, keeping an eye on what the market is and how to be competitive in recruiting and retention is hard. And
Yeah.
sometimes you don't even have the option to worry about those retention pieces. So finding out what the core challenge is it getting someone in the door, or is it the retention piece?
Mm-hmm.
So getting them in the door, sometimes we can make a change with that. Sometimes if it's not in their budget, it's simply not in their budget, but we can at least let them know what to expect. And then do they need to look at interns? Do they maybe need to look at another industry where the skill set can easily be generalized across, where they can cross train maybe in their industry, but not have to cross train those core skill sets? You never like to tell people that you just can't help, but sometimes you have to. I mean, you have to have enough in the market to be able to be competitive in talking to candidates.
And no, go ahead.
No, that's
And I think one of the things that I always looked at as a small business owner, especially a small business owner, trying to squeeze blood out of a stone and starting from nothing is, number one, obviously you have to be honest with yourself about the amount of revenue that you have coming in to support the staff or a potential staffing company. I think one of the things that I always looked at when bringing on employees is what are their income expectations and where are they at in their life cycle? So for example, a single person coming right out of college doesn't have the same income level expectations as someone that's married or married with kids, etc. When you're starting off young, you could probably share an apartment with a couple of people, etc. And so one of the things that I always did to try to balance that is I always asked myself, like, okay, what are their income level expectations? What do they need to survive, and can I provide it? And then merging that with like the company story and some of these other things, because there is, as I'm sure that you've seen over and over, there's a lot of talent out there, and there's a lot of these big companies, they would maybe never want to take a second look at this person, but this person is one of those diamond in the roughs, and there's actually quite a few of them out there that just needs a shot,
right.
in the right environment.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
And so I think that again, from a small business owner's perspective and just starting out, I think from my mind that's a good way to do it. But this kind of leads me to my next question. So you have from a business model standpoint and a recruiting standpoint, obviously you have your internal, right, which would be I'm going to do it myself, and then you have your external, like hey, I need help.
Right.
Like, what's the balance there? Like, at what point are people usually reaching out to you, like saying, okay, I've gotten to a certain point by myself and now I need to move the ball? Like, what's that look like?
Sure. A lot of times it'll be the point at which they need 2 of the same position now, because then you're talking about typically double the amount of interviews. Or if they're adding a new position that is a little bit unique. So let's say you are an insurance brokerage and you're getting big enough and you decide that you want to have all of your accounting in-house. Okay. You can, maybe you already know what that looks like, but because it is a completely different skill set, sometimes that is the trigger where you're like, you know what, this is more than I want to dig into right now. So going to a recruiting firm for a new position for the company, something that's more high volume. And then probably more than that is once they've tried posting to the job boards, they've tried their referral network. There does come a point, especially with a small business in, neighborhood communities, that you may tap out the market. So candidates won't be as plentiful, or it will seem like they aren't. And that's really where a recruiting firm to go out to market and start the outreach for you,
Mm-hmm.
where they can identify resumes of candidates that meet your minimum criteria and then reach out to them to say, hey, we saw your information, love to chat if you'd like to chat. So that outreach is typically more than what small business owners have time for
Got it.
in their grand list of things that they have to do
Mhm.
every day, right? So it's that point at which you start talking about specializing with your vendors, just kind of in general. Most of the time, it is a time factor.
Got
It's a
it.
time suck,
So,
especially because it's typically the owner that needs to do those interviews. So
Mhm.
the screening can really be a time killer if you have to screen 10 people to get to the two that you really want to bring back into the office. You can have some outside help, assist with that.
right, right. So basically, the business owner is in a position to where they only have so much time, and the business is kind of going, and to get to the next level, they need like a specialization, like accounting, or
Right.
maybe something related to technology, or could be an internal human resources person, or it's not in their,
Not in
primary
their immediate
wheelhouse, which is
wheelhouse.
like sell
Yeah.
insurance
Right.
or service
Right.
insurance. Got it. And so how would you describe the current, I guess, staffing recruiting climate? Because obviously it's, can be cyclical,
Very
right?
cyclical. Yes. Yes. This is my 25th year, and it is cyclical.
Mhm.
All the way back to 2008, which I remember really, really well.
Oh, mm.
Um, it is, I'll tell you, the biggest challenge right now, I think, in our market or in our industry, is simply that there are so many ways to make a position successful, if you will, today, that it almost makes it harder for business owners because you have the folks that want to be in office, you have the folks
Oh,
that want to be
yeah.
Oh
completely
yeah.
remote, you have the folks that want to be hybrid.
Mm.
They need it quiet, they need a loud environment to kind of get their energy up. Just being able to solve for that in one space is a challenge.
Yeah.
And opening up business to hybrid opportunities is wonderful. But as you scale and you have those hybrid candidates, it's really almost its own arm, if you will, of your business. It has to be operated just a little differently.
Mhm.
So that's one of the things that I think is it's almost a pitfall because they make it sound like, oh, you can recruit anybody from anywhere these days. It's easy. You can
Hmm.
find the talent all over. But supporting them, training them, and retaining them is very different. And it requires different attention, different
Mhm.
tech, things like that. So,
Yeah.
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 Very cool. So a couple last questions. So we talked about the corporate environment,
hmm
and then of course you've got the small business environment, and then talk to me a little bit about the overall cost structure, the typical cost structure of staffing, and then how the cost structure that you had created for small business is different than that.
Sure. Typically, recruiting industry standard anywhere from 15 to 25% of the individual's annual salary. Um, 20 to 25% is what you would expect
Hmm.
if you're just off the cuff asking. Um, what we found though with small businesses, as you're selling, if you will, they're saying we don't have the budget for that.
Mhm.
We need a $50,000 a year manager. That's another 10 grand for a recruiting fee. If that person doesn't work out, you have all the same risk,
Hmm.
right? But a little more cost up front.
Mhm.
So, in looking at the reasons that small business owners said no and what their real needs were, what we did is we completely morphed there is contingency search, which is basically tell us what you need, and if you hire someone from us, then you pay us.
Mhm.
Then there's retained search. That's a little different, very standard in the executive and healthcare space where you pay upfront and then the rest of it whenever you hire that person and or maybe even 6 to 12 months later. What we decided to do was kind of a hybrid of that, and instead of just having a standard price, which to me still doesn't make sense because the effort that you might need to put into something in one market is very different in another market, and it can literally be different 60 or 90 days
Hmm.
later. So, what we decided to do was meet with the business owner, gather all the info, go to market, see if they're viable. If they are, tell them what the cost would be based on today's recruiting time, today's recruiting expenses. We take that and break it into 3 payments. They
Right.
start the process with us, and then whenever they hire that individual, and then typically 3 to 6 months later. It broke up the payments in a way that made sense, where it was ensuring that both parties were invested on the front end, because there's a lot of research, a lot of meetings, and ensuring that the interview cadence that we all promised was met. And then, staying with the company to make sure that it's a good fit, because we have those conversations. If either party thinks that it's not a good fit, it's a good opportunity to start those other follow-up conversations to see if somebody might come back in for a follow-up interview or that type of thing. So it's not always easy or clean, I guess, if you will, but try to make it as easy as possible.
Yeah, I do have to say that the cost structure that I'm familiar with from your company is the only one that I've seen that makes sense from a small business owner standpoint. On the corporate side, where they're just throwing this 15 to 25+% on a new hire, like, I get it, you guys got too much money, and it's not a big deal. But the small business owner, I think that you and your company have done an incredible job of structuring that from the mind of a small business owner, which has been cool.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I mean, that was the goal, right?
Yeah,
Was to
no,
literally
really,
present a product that made sense and that people could say yes to.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that, like I said, you can solve for everything, but it does make more sense. And when I think about anything that we buy, why not have it be real-time data that you're pricing it with, right?
I agree.
So,
I agree.
and sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes there's either not a candidate pool, or, the opposite could be true. We can go to them and say, yes, we can find this person for you. Sometimes it's, hey, we could find this person for you if you could X, Y, or Z. And we like to offer that solution for them too, because maybe we're not a good resource right now, but it's at least worth them knowing what they need to be competitive in the market.
Yeah, and that transparency means a lot to a small business owner. Not just, yeah, sure, we'll take on the project, but you do the research on the front end, and you report back and telling them, yeah, this is going to work, or hey, we don't have the pool of candidates. So
Right.
That's amazing.
So last question from me. So how do you measure success, like in terms of speed to hire, retention, quality of hire, and client experience or candidate experience?
So our major, I guess, milestones, if you will, are for the candidate experience. Very important, because again, referrals are everything. So if you have a great experience with a recruiter, the odds of you sending somebody that you know that's looking for work to that same recruiter are high.
Right.
That's important. We've always told recruiters, you have two things, your time and your reputation, and you have to protect both of them. And it's their responsibility. So as leadership, you teach them how to protect that, right? And same thing with reputations of the company. You want to make sure that what you're putting out there is real, so that the candidates that come to you and the folks that work for you, again, can continue to refer folks and refer them confidently.
Yeah, and there's got to be a delicate balance there as well, because you've got, obviously you want referrals of people like, hey, use my recruiter, right? And then of course you've got the business owners that are like, I need people,
right?
And you have to balance, the candidates being happy,
right,
and the business owners being happy.
Yep.
And they probably don't always line up.
It doesn't always line up. No, sometimes you have to have some uncomfortable conversations. Yeah, that's part of it sometimes. But again, if you look at it as everyone's working towards the same success, which is finding the right person for your company, and as an individual or as an employee, finding the right opportunity with a company. So if it's not a fit, it's not a fit. Time to move on. And if it's not a fit, maybe you're fired. If it's not a fit, maybe they decided it's not the right place for them and they say, hey, I'm going to move on. But either way, it gives you both a chance for true success.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Anything else on your end, Carly?
No, thank you for joining us today.
Of course.
Did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
Okay. So last question. So we like to close out every segment with a ask me anything question. So that's asking me just one question. Could be personal, could be business, whatever comes to mind, and I'll do my best to answer.
Well, you mentioned that you are a small business owner multiple times over, so I'm curious, what is your next venture? Or can you say?
My next venture, well, there's one maybe I can't say. That's a big one.
Okay.
Um,
Little teaser.
Yeah.
I know.
Stay tuned.
I know. Man, where do I want to go with this one? So actually the next venture, and this we soft launched it, but it's about to be a full launch. We're launching an insurance accounting company.
Ah.
So you talk about the specializations,
Mm-hmm.
if you will. Obviously we do insurance. Accounting's something, I guess, relatable, but quite a bit different. And add insurance to it, and the insurance accounting is even more strange because every time someone adds a car or removes glass coverage, adds glass coverage, it creates a transaction, which either creates a commission or a chargeback, and then you've got to aggregate all those transactions, and it's a barrier to scalability. Let's put it that way. So, I spent a very long time solving for that. Finally solved for it, and now we're launching a company to offer it to others. And so that, I guess it's officially launched. We've got we'll really push the go button on it probably at the beginning of next year, but all the pieces are in place now.
Very exciting, and absolutely a service I can see would be very valuable for your agents.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of agents out there pulling their hair out, something they don't want to deal with, even their own accounting people. I mean, we went through 2 different large accounting firms that were trying to manage it all, and they did an okay job, but there's just so many weird little nuances as it relates to insurance, especially the agency bill, which is basically a manual accounting process that can be quite cumbersome. Then you add commissions, and everyone wants to do commissions a different way, and all that fun stuff. So there's a lot that we've been through as it relates to accounting that we finally solved for, and now we're going to turn it into a company to help other agents at a cost lower than they could bring it on themselves with redundancy. Thank you for tuning into our podcast, From the Darkhorse's Mouth. If you want to learn more about us, go to darkhorseinsurance.com.
And follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn at Darkhorse Insurance Brokers, and email any questions to podcast@darkhorseinsurance.com. Thank you.